First Nations TV supports working together towards closing the gap in health, education, economic development outcomes and opportunities for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people.
In 2006, more than 40 Indigenous and non-Indigenous organisations came together to form Close the Gap, Australia's largest ever campaign to improve the health of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Since then, the Close the Gap campaign has come a long way. As part of his national apology to Indigenous Australia, Prime Minister Kevin Rudd pledged to close the gap on Indigenous health inequality. Both government and opposition signed the historic statement of intent and committed to work with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples to close the gap by 2030. This was followed by the single biggest injection of new funding to improve Indigenous health. All this has been made possible because of the work of a growing number of Indigenous and non-Indigenous organisations and the support of more than 135,000 Australians who got behind the campaign. But we still have a long way to go, and the campaign to end the Indigenous health crisis is at a critical point.
The pledge to close the gap by the government was a step in the right direction.
I hope it's just not a short-term promise, because it is a long-term problem.
The government was recognising the feeling across all Australia that this gap in life expectancy, the gap in health, is not something that we should tolerate.
You might have a child of 10 that's been to 100 the community funerals in their life, and that's no exaggeration. Whereas in mainstream Australia, that child would have only been to 1 or 2.
When the Prime Minister announced that they were going to do a progress report on the Close the Gap commitments, the Close the Gap Steering Committee decided that we would also pull together an independent report which would shadow the government's report. The Steering Committee thought it was very important to get the advice and expertise from the people which work on the ground in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health. The report found that it's still a long way to go to live up to these commitments.
Around Australia, there are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health services working hard to turn the Indigenous health crisis around. They know what they need to do, they know how to do it, and they are the best place to do it. They just need the right kind of support.
Sunrise actually started off in a room as small as this, and to the size it is now is actually, it's a wow, you know.
Since Sunrise started, I've really noticed a greater sense of engagement and ownership by community than what had been there before when it was a government-run health service.
Now it's good, much better, and we're able to feel comfortable with it, knowing that it's coming from our own Indigenous health service.
We did dramatically improve the anemia rates and had significant impact on the rates of infectious diseases. We need to have stronger, healthier babies, and we were getting that. My vision for Sunrise is to see Indigenous health workers running the clinics themselves.
You need young people. The people who knows the health best out in the communities, other people are from the communities. It actually empowers the people out in the communities, knowing they've always got something of their own.
It's a significant award, you know. It's just like winning an NRL Grand Final with no money.
We won the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners Practice of the Year, and that's from any general practice in Australia.
People are talking, people are smiling, people are happy to get engaged because they own it. We don't own it, I don't own it, the board don't own it, the members own it. We've gone from 1,200 people using the place to 5,500 using the place. So that in itself is telling us we're doing something right, but we need to not to stop there. We need to assess all that all the time.
It's a lot easier going to a place that's Aboriginal run. Being an Aboriginal person, they understand your issues, your needs. You don't feel pressure, you don't feel eyes looking at you all the time.
As you have seen, Aboriginal community-controlled health services are essential. With the right approach, mainstream health services can also grow to effectively serve Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities.
Aboriginal people are less likely to access primary health care.
I think in '95 they probably had about 10 people in Torres Strait Islander people accessing this service.
We have people from Redcliffe, which is it's about an hour away. People from Stradbroke Island who won't go anywhere except here.
We use the Nala Health Clinic regularly, whenever we need to. I've been doing the heart moves on Thursdays and I've found it really great because we get to be with lots of other Aboriginal people.
We've been able to diagnose new conditions early rather than them coming in with symptoms of those conditions. We work very strongly with Indigenous community here, especially elders. We have interagency meetings with all the other Indigenous organisations so everyone knows what everyone else is doing. The Queensland Government has given me funding to build a new centre of excellence in Indigenous primary health care. I'm very optimistic that Indigenous health will start to improve over the next 5 to 10 years.
As you have seen, all around Australia there are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health services doing great work. To continue, they need the right kind of support from government. While great progress has been made, this support is not coming fast or far enough. There needs to be a genuine partnership between government and the Indigenous health sector to develop a long-term plan of action. And a significant proportion of funding must be directed to Aboriginal community-controlled health services. If we are to be the generation that finally closes the gap on health inequality in Australia, we cannot afford to lose momentum. We must raise our voices and act now to make sure government gets it right. For the latest campaign updates and actions, go to www.oxfam.org.au/closethegap.
I think I can be part of the generation that turns around the health inequality in our country. And I think that's where my education background comes into play as well, because I can help teach the young ones and help train them up in all different areas of the health professions.
We don't need to wait any longer. We don't need new technology to do this. We don't need new drug treatments to do this. We just need to do what we know now and do it better.
Let's get it right. Let's close the gap. Let's have a long-term plan.
Walking to you in the job.